I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. You're going to learn what's in this box. Spoiler, it's a charging case for an ISDT. It's pretty freaking cool. There's two kinds of people in this world. One kind is the kind of person who, when they travel, they just grab all their stuff, they pile it into a big pile, they throw it in the bottom of a bag, and they just throw it over their back and go. And the other kind of person is the kind of person who has really cool cases and cutouts for every single thing. And if you're the second kind of person, then this is for you. What's in this box is a really cool little charging setup. Now this one's for an ISDT Q6, and you can see it's got AC input, it's got DC input for like if you got a 6S charging pack. You plug the battery in here. It's even got USB charging for your phone, got a fan for cooling, and it's got built inside, it's even got 750 watt power supply. Now, the product we're actually looking at today, because you can't just buy this box, what you're actually going to buy is this metal plate and the supporting hardware to build this box with your own charger and your own power supply. You got to do the labor. But this is a pretty cool, I mean, at this point, you're either drooling right now or you're like, that's so stupid and overwrought. Why would I ever do that? And if you're the second guy, I'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's video. But if you're drooling right now and you just absolutely love the look of this, there's a link down in the video description to where you can buy this kit. And I'm going to show you my build series. I did a build. I built it, as you can tell. And I'm going to show you how it all goes together if you want to follow along with that. Before we go into the build series, you may notice that this box has my logo on it. And what happened is Turtle Labs reached out to me and they were like, hey, Bach Grinder did a review of this. Do you want to do a review of it? We're doing a special plate with the Bach Grinder logo on it. And I went, if you're doing a plate with the Bach Grinder logo on it, do one with my logo on it. Bach Grinder's so good at marketing. So if you order this, you can order it without the JB logo on it, just the plain plate. I won't be offended. If you choose to order it with either the Bach Grinder or the JB logo, that costs more money and then I get a cut. So it's basically like if you were going to join my Patreon, maybe you buy this instead, and I don't know, it's up to you. But if you buy it with the JB logo, I feel obligated to disclose that I do get a cut of that. And if you buy it with the Bach Grinder logo, he gets a cut, and like, I kind of want to sell more than him. Now this is my ISDT Q6, and as you can see, it has seen better days. In fact, they say, be careful, put down a towel and lay your ISDT on the towel so you don't scratch up the screen, but that ship has kind of sailed. So I'm not going to worry about that. This bracket's going to go down over the ISDT Q6, and this is going to go face up like so. Okay, perfect. Scratching it up. You might even want to cover the screen or something while you're doing this to keep it from getting scraped up, or tape the edges of the metal. Various ways to go about this. As you can see, there's plenty of opportunities to scrape this up and scratch the screen as you are working through this process. And then we'll just turn this over and tighten it down. Next, there's the fan, and it has an indicator on it. In case you didn't know, all computer fans have an indicator on it for the direction of airflow. And I think we're going to want airflow pulling out of the case so that, yeah, the fan's going to blow out so that airflow is sucked in. Next, we'll install the banana plugs, and on this particular piece, there's one set of banana plugs here and one set here. Typically, those would be used as like an input and an output or whatever. You can sort of set them up however you want, depending on how you connect the wiring and how you install it. But they'll just slip down in, and let's do red on the right. And there's a nut that comes and slides over them. Now we've got the USB charging option here. So it came with this little guy. This is actually a really clever little thing. To add USB charging to really any project, just takes 12 volts input and outputs USB 2.1 amps. 5 oh, it'd be nice if it was a quick charge 3.0. That would be optimal, wouldn't it? But you can find these usually in automotive stores or online on Amazon. They're made for installing in like an automobile, or you can even get waterproof ones for marine use. And just anytime you have a 12 volt output, you just solder it up and you're ready to go. And just squeeze that a little as I tighten it down to crush down on this cover. Nice. Honestly, we could probably even just remove that. Like, this is going to be in a box, right? It's not going to get rained on. So let's just take that off. These wires, which have spade terminals, we'll just press on there and press on there. What do we got for the other side? Oh, even got a fuse. Very nice. Very nice touch. And got the lugs here. Okay. The balance board comes with this 3D printed shim, which kind of goes down over the top of it and stands it off so it's flush with the surface of the metal. So the balance board is just going to go like so. This piece, it's going to get plugged in to the charger. And this guy goes over it, and it keeps the wire flush and neat and out of the way. Also, very nice touch. We got two more of these long screws coming up through here. It sets down over the existing long screws there, and another nut goes on each. Let's just hand tighten these because these are already screwed in. Make sure this is straight. I'm just going to hand tighten the back two. So let's make sure we get this flat and not at an angle. When you tighten this, don't over tighten it. You can easily sort of crush and squish the balance board. Alright folks, I'm back. This is probably one video for you, but it's been a couple days for me. I'm picking up where I left off. Actually, I skipped a step, and it was to install this little guy here. This allows you to plug in an AC power cable, and we are going to do that because I am going to install a power supply in here so I can plug this into the wall. We're going to use these medium length screws. This kit comes with a 12 volt voltage regulator, and the reason you need this is that the case fan and the USB charger both are designed to run off of 12 volts only. Your input voltage is going to vary depending on how you're powering it. So we can power it via an AC input to the power supply that I'm going to put in the box. That power supply is going to output 12 volts, and I was originally thinking, do I even need the regulator? If my power supply puts out 12 volts, then I'm good to go. But be careful, because we can also power this from a DC input, either via banana plugs or probably more likely an XT60. In other words, if you have just a great big 5,000 milliamp hour 5S, 6S pack, you plug it in here and you charge off of that. And in that case, the input voltage is going to be too high and would blow the USB device and the fan. So we do need to use this voltage regulator if we want to keep the option of using a DC input to field charge. In other words, we want to do this. For this next step, we're going to prep some crimp-on barrel terminals. And I guess these are designed to crimp on, but I'm going to solder them on. So I'm just going to cut off this plastic sheath. We can heat shrink it later if we need to. You can get these at your local hardware store, or you can order them off the internet, of course. I suggested that they include these with part of the kit. You're going to buy a box of 30 of these things and use 3 of them. They can buy a big box of 1,000 and just throw 3 of them in as you might need to. So hopefully, if you're purchasing this at some point in the future, you'll get these. I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver to just expand this a little bit. It's soft metal, and this is actually 10 gauge wire from my Beast class build. 12 gauge is the minimum you're going to want here. I'm just using 10 gauge because I happen to have it. Yeah. Nice. Very nice. This crimp is not going to be the primary way that this is held together. Now this is a 10 gauge wire. It's nice and hot, so I'm going to definitely crank my soldering iron up to the maximum. This blue stuff here is called Funtac. It's sold under different names, but that's the brand that I've got, and it is fantastic. We're up to 850. If I had thicker solder, I would do well to use it, but I don't. Should really have tinned this before I started soldering it, I guess. Let's come in from the underside. Try and pull some of that solder up to the inside by heating it. Yeah, there we go. Good. Solder goes to the heat. So by heating the underside, I pulled the solder in to the wire from where it was out on the tip. It's the one downside of this stuff, is it does get pretty freaking hot and gooey. It gets kind of gooey when it gets hot. It's not ideal. Let's see here. So these are the output terminals, or no, the input terminals. And that's going to go over to here. Alright, so our input terminals are all nicely soldered and crimped, and I've put heat shrink on the positive one. I didn't heat shrink the negative one. Ground is just everywhere anyway, so why heat shrink it? But Joshua from the future here. Why heat shrink it? Well, because as you can see, the ground one could theoretically move over and touch the positive lug, which we definitely would not want. So I'm going to go back in a later step and heat shrink the ground one too, and you should too. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these guys, put an XT60 on here, and plug it into the input side of the Q6. I made a little bit of a mistake by using 10 gauge. I just used 10 gauge wire because I had it laying around, and I thought, why not? But 10 gauge is actually a little bit difficult to solder to an XT60. I'll make it work, but that's what we'll do next. So a whole lot of cutting and clamping and soldering later. Here's the end result. These are the input terminals, and we've got an XT60 bulkhead mount here with the ring terminals screwed to the banana plugs and going to the input of the ISDT Q6. We haven't done any of the AC side yet. We'll come to that. These two wires here will eventually go to the DC power supply, and they're just loose for now. But you can see basically this is the whole input side, whether the power comes from the power supply, the banana plug, or the XT60. One way or another, the Q6 will get power on its input. And then here is the output side, which is a little bit simpler. We've got an XT60 here going to these banana terminals and to another bulkhead mount XT60. That's basically it. When it drives the output, either of these two, well, both of those two will get voltage, and that's it. The only thing I do want to point out here is that this is pretty close to the fan, and I had to do a little bit of a weirdo, oddball 90-degree angle on the XT60. That's not how you would normally do it. Just kind of brought the wires in at an angle and did some kind of weird stuff with the heat shrink to try and make it work. There you go. The next thing to do is to mount the DC voltage regulator to the indicated location on the plate. I'm going to do that with some 3M foam mounting tape. If you don't have a spool of this laying around your shop, then go ahead and get one. There's a link in the video description. It's useful for a million things. I am going to reinforce this later with a zip tie, because just using it by itself will not hold it on. But I'm going to go ahead and press it down for now, and it'll hold it in place at least for as long as we're doing this project. These are the wires coming from the USB power adapter, and I'm going to cut those a little shorter, and I'm going to twist them together with the fan wires. Do make sure that you leave the fuse in the circuit, you definitely want that fuse. Here are the fan wires, and they come with this weirdo plug. We can just get rid of that, and we're going to need to figure out how to wire this up. Please note that I'm doing this exactly backwards. Do you see how the wire I'm working with now has a stripe on it? That one goes on the black wire from the USB plug, not the red wire, as you see me doing here. And the two remaining wires, they go to the red wire, not the black wire, as you see me doing here. I have this exactly backwards. Don't make my mistake. There's no harm if you do, but don't. These are the output ports on the 12-volt regulator, output plus and output minus. We'll go ahead and tin those, and then we will solder up the red and black wires to the fan and to the USB power supply. Well, to the fan, they're not red and black, but I think you know what I mean. Now these are the ring terminals that came from the USB charger. I cut them off, and instead of throwing them away, I'm going to reuse them. Here's how. I'm going to solder them to the input side of the voltage regulator. Here is the negative and the positive, of course. And then I'm going to connect the lugs over on the input side, the banana plugs on the input side. Yeah, I thought I was done, but the voltage regulator also needs input voltage. Make sure you orient these so they cannot touch each other, because that would be bad. So you have to face them away from each other. Yeah, that's how you want to figure it out. In a minute, we're going to apply power, but before we do that, we're going to do our continuity checks. I'm going pretty quick here, but you do want to see continuity between the positives on the output and the positives on the input. You do not want to see continuity between the input and the output side, and you want to make sure that you haven't accidentally gotten a plus and a minus cross-wired. So double check your wiring very, very carefully before you plug anything in. And we plug in, and no smoke, no fire, hopefully. Boom. ISDT powers up. That is a very good sign. The next thing we need to do is adjust the output voltage on the regulator, and you're going to do that by plugging in a battery. Be very, very careful going in here with a screwdriver while the circuit is powered. We're going to turn this little tiny screw here to adjust the output voltage on the regulator to be exactly 12 volts. So now we'll verify that when we plug in the battery, the fan begins spinning. If your fan doesn't spin, then probably you messed up the wiring like I did the first time I did this. And by looking at the USB plug, we can verify the output of the 12-volt regulator, and we can verify the input voltage to the ISDT is 15.2 volts. Everything looks pretty good. I'm just going to bundle these wires and zip tie them together to keep them neat. I hate having loose wires rattling around inside a case. And then I'm going to install the final plate that holds the ISDT in place. The plate that has been holding it in place thus far only mostly holds it in place. It can kind of slip loose, and this one is the actual one that goes on the back for the final security. Don't crank this down so tight that you crack the case, though. You can really crank it down with the screws if you're not careful. Now, the instructions I'm going to show you here are specific to this exact power supply, but in order to make this power supply turn on, we need to solder a resistor to the two pins I'm about to show you. The way I'm soldering the resistor, where it's hanging off the edge of the board, turns out that doesn't really work really well because it's going to end up banging against the edge of the case. So you're actually going to want to kind of turn it around and face it inwards so it's out of the way. You'll see that at the end of the video. Here's the other pad that needs a wire soldered to it. It is the 1, 2, 3, 4th pad from the edge. Again, that is only the instructions for this specific power supply. Your mileage may vary. And I have attached spade terminals to the other end of the wire. I have crimped and soldered them. I'm going to solder the 10 gauge wires that would have been left hanging from the input banana terminals. These are the ones that are going to come from the power supply, and I'm going to solder those to the output pads on the power supply. You will need to make sure you check which one is positive and which one is negative for your particular power supply. If you're using the exact power supply I've got, well, you know what? It's still a good idea to check. And then we're going to take the two spade terminals and we're going to attach them to these two lugs on the input plug receptacle. It has a little switch on it it doesn't switch the mains power, it just switches this little switch that switches the power supply on and off. So mains power will always be running into the power supply. The power supply will just not always be outputting 12 volts. So you can't see this because it's off camera, but I've plugged the power supply into the wall, and now when I switch on the on switch, we get 12 volts from the power supply. Fantastic. Now we come to the dangerous part of the job where we're going to wire up the mains power section. I've got a power cord for my power supply that I've cut off, and I've stripped it, and we're going to reveal the 3 wires that are inside it. In the United States, those are going to be green, white, and black. Green is ground, white is neutral, and black is line. Is it load? It's L. I can never remember. Black is the hot. So we're going to make sure to wire those up exactly correctly to our terminal. I'm just checking here with a multimeter to make sure I correctly understand what each of the pins on the terminal do. Looking closer, we can see that it's labeled L, N, and E, or ground. So that's how we're going to wire it up. Now I'm installing the black L wire on this bottom lug here. I've confirmed that it has electrical continuity with that flat tab. I don't know what the purpose of that flat tab is. I really don't know why this one is labeled and that one isn't, but I checked with a multimeter and they have continuity, so I assume that is the correct way to wire it up. Yeah, somebody tell me in the comments what the purpose of that flat tab is. Oh no, I just figured it out. It's for the fuse, of course. The fuse is between the flat tab and the little lug that we're soldering to. That's got to be it. Now I'm going to go ahead and solder these for security, and also because I am out of spade terminals. In general, I like to, spade terminals are okay, crimping's okay, but soldering is just the most secure thing you could possibly do, and especially when working with mains power, I don't like to screw around. And here is the end result of the black, white, and green wires, how they're wired up before I go ahead and put that heat shrink down and heat shrink to cover them. Conveniently, the plug that I'm using has also been imprinted with an L, an N, and an earth ground symbol, so I can also use my multimeter's continuity mode to just double check that I've got the wiring absolutely correct. Well, there's a step I seem to have not recorded. I'm not sure why, but I used some double-sided mounting tape to stick the power supply to the bottom of the box just to keep it from rattling around. This specific power supply fits in there pretty snugly, and so it actually is not likely to rattle around just from friction, but you never can be too careful. I also went back and I applied some liquid electrical tape to the backside of the banana plugs, just to keep them in case they came into contact with the case of the power supply or something. Again, you never can be too careful. There's one final step which I'm not going to show here in the video, and that is that the holes on the case, if you're using the Seahorse 300 case like I am, these holes right here need to be drilled to 7/64 inch. If you are in a metric country, I don't know what that is. But they need to be drilled out to a slightly larger size so that the screws can bite into them. If you drive the screws in with the existing size, you may split the plastic. So I'm going to go out to the barn and do that, and then this wonderful build will be done. Well, there you go. That's how I put together this charging case. And you know what? I said at the beginning of this video, there's 2 kinds of people in the world. The kind of person who just throws everything in a bag, and the kind of person who has a fancy case for everything. And I have to confess to you, I'm the first one. This is so cool, but I have so much crap to take on trips with me that this would take up so much room, I probably would never use it. So I'm going to give it away. That's right. I am giving away this exact kit, including the ISDT 6, the power supply, everything exactly as it is. How can you enter? The way to enter is to leave 1 comment and 1 comment below. Do not leave more than 1 comment or you will be disqualified. I'm turning on moderation for this video because otherwise I get 8,000 notifications when you guys leave comments. So when you leave a comment, you will see your comment and nobody else's. Don't be confused or concerned. I will perform a drawing and I will announce the winner in a video posted to my channel. So check back on my channel in about 3 to 5 days and look for the announcement of the winner. and you'll have to reach out to me and let me know how to mail this to you. One more thing. This has mains power in it. I did all the wiring. I am not a certified electrician, not a total yutz either. But if you get your lawyer, if you win this, you certify that you are qualified to evaluate whether it is safe for you to use. And I am in no way responsible if this electrocutes you or burns your house down or kills your puppy. Seriously. I didn't want to do this giveaway because anytime you're dealing with mains power, it's not rocket science, but the stakes are so high if you get it wrong. So this is how I'm going to do it. That disclaimer applies. If you win this, it's on you to evaluate whether this is safe to use. It's not on me. So enjoy the giveaway. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy flying.